My name's Lucy Phillips. I'm a photographer. I'm based in Hastings, just along the coast. I'm going to bring things down really low tech now because I'm going to pass around a few cameras. Okay, my project is called What Cannot Be Seen. And What Cannot Be Seen is a postal photography project using homemade pinhole cameras, which is what I'm passing around at the moment. Basically, I send the cameras out to people and invite them to photograph what cannot be seen. They send the cameras back to me and I develop the images in the darkroom. They also explain what they photographed and why. The project came about basically as a result of two things. First of all, I've been experimenting with pinhole photography, which anyone who's experimented with it will know it's a very slow and considered way of making an image. You really have to think about what you're going to photograph, set up the image. The results can also be quite unpredictable and quite unlike what you've seen when you compose the image. Another influence was the French artist Sophie Calle. It seemed to me that she uses the camera as a kind of covert or recording device to look at her own life and the lives of others. And these two ideas, for some reason, came together in my mind, and I came up with the idea of sending these tiny cameras to people for them to take a photograph for me. What cannot be seen as an idea, I suppose, came about just as what can I ask people to photograph? So I thought that was quite a broad idea. It would allow people to photograph something, look at it as a visual game, or perhaps to reveal something secret, or just to look at the camera itself as something very small that in a sense could not be seen and could therefore be used quite surreptitiously. This is one of the first images I took with the camera. It's a pyramid, it's a tomb actually in St Leonard's. It's about 3 or 4 metres high and the camera's placed very close to it. And this became kind of the logo for the project. I use it a lot online. And it somehow became to symbolise this idea of what cannot be seen. How I started the project was by using a Facebook status update. So I'm quite in favour of Facebook, really. But so this is what I basically said was, I'm doing a photography project. Anyone who wants to take part, then send me your details. And I got a cross-selection of friends and acquaintances, people I knew very well, people I hadn't seen for years, and people in other countries. What Facebook enabled me to do was have a very quick response, and really get, people responded because they were interested. Nothing more than that. So they sent me their details, I sent them the camera, and they sent them back to me. I asked them to send them back quickly, which most people did, and then I developed the images. And when I started the project, I think I thought it was the process that was interesting, this idea of sending a camera out, receiving it back through the post, like an old-fashioned piece of mail art, and that whatever I got back was going to be interesting. The failures, the successes, but just documenting the process was quite interesting. As soon as I started to get the images back, though, I realised there was something else going on. So one of the first images I received back, that's the next slide. So this, can everyone read that? Shall I read it out? It says, "Dear Lucy, this is hopefully a portrait of my real mum. She cannot be seen by my adopted family as it will break my other mum's heart." So I got this text, and then I go into the dark room with my tiny camera, and it's one of the first images. And obviously I'm quite moved by this text already. It's somebody I've known, quite a few years ago, didn't know he was adopted. I've gone into the dark room, and next I've developed this image, which in a way it's a failed portrait. The person is very far away, you can't really see their face, but these two things come together to create something very potent. You can see the person's intention when they're making the image, and I realised that the project actually was tapping into something in people, a desire perhaps to make something meaningful and maybe to reveal something about their lives. And so the project took on its own momentum in this way. I also realised that it wasn't really about having one go, although that was again my initial idea. Because people had such a strong desire to create a successful image or to make something meaningful, I gave people 2 or 3 goes if necessary, and even went so far as to collaborate with people. This next image is a photograph of my neighbour who about a year ago fell off some scaffolding and broke his neck. He's very lucky to be alive. And he was very keen to record this time in his life where what he basically says is, this is where I hide at the back of my house reading, where I cannot be seen by other people, because he's obviously attracting attention with his neck brace. So this is a collaboration between us. In terms of online media, as I say, I started this project by using Facebook, and it enabled me to have a very quick response to the project and to gauge reaction to it and interest. Something about using Facebook is very impulsive, so by posting the project it kind of gave it a momentum and an energy and gained interest. After a certain point I realised that it was something I didn't want to keep as a personal project on my personal space, so I created a separate page for the project where I could also gain a new audience and interact with people who weren't known to me, and also not bore my other Facebook friends with details of what I was doing with pinhole cameras. I also created a website which is the professional kind of anonymous side of the project, if you like. So if I want to show someone the work, I can direct them to the website, all the images and the texts are posted there, a brief explanation of what the project's about. So I use Facebook, and on Facebook, incidentally, I post the images but not the text, because I think that would be an intrusion into people's privacy. So the images are posted but not the text. I also use Flickr a great deal, and I post the images there with their text. And again, this enables me to tap into a huge audience of contacts and people who are interested in the project. Can be quite anonymous, and is gained a lot of interest in the project, lots of international participation as well. So the project's been driven along by the internet, even though it's not an online project. I just very quickly would like to just run through some images and just tell you what they're about. This is one of the first images I received, which is about someone's hidden fetish life. It's an incredibly technically accomplished image, which I really don't know how she achieved. She's not a photographer or an artist. She had a good idea, she followed the instructions, and she created this beautiful image. The next one is a very personal one, somebody who's known very well to me, whose first child was premature and sadly died. And this is a photograph that she took of a photograph of the child in the incubator. So her text was very simple. It said, "Our firstborn." Without knowing her, you didn't know the story, but as I did the story, I realised she had told me something in image which she hadn't told me really in real life, which I found really interesting. The next image is just absolutely beautiful, and it's somebody's partner when they were 21 weeks pregnant. It doesn't really need a text. I think it's such a clear illustration of the idea and works beautifully. People have also been quite playful with the project as well. This is somebody's father's secret collection of erotica that was passed on to her, and as children they weren't allowed to see it, and she says, "My children now are not allowed to see it." So she set this up beautifully, and she had a couple of goes and came up with this image of her secret collection of erotica. I've had a couple of people take part who've actually been pinhole photographers. This is one who's actually a Brighton photographer, and I guess that might have given her an edge in understanding how the camera worked, but it's a very simple idea of somebody not being able to be seen from the street by people who he was looking down and they were looking up, and the image itself is exquisite, I think. Finally, I'd like to say that although some of the participants have been artists and photographers, this doesn't necessarily give them an advantage, and everyone really is on an equal footing. All you need to do is have the camera, have an idea, and make your image. And this was taken by a 5-year-old child. So it's a very direct child's response to the idea. It's the inside of a dishwasher, which is cannot be seen by children. I think he might have had help setting up, but the idea, I'm sure, was entirely his. The final image from the project that I'll show you is an image that for me is a very powerful one, because most people have been very happy to be associated with their image, or indeed very proud, and I think rightly so. Few people haven't wanted to be because of the nature of their image, and this one's specifically asked to be kept completely anonymous as his text. If you go to the website, which is whatcannotbeseen.com, you can read the text, and basically he says this is about his addiction to painkillers, and he wanted to be kept completely anonymous. But he was very much a willing participant in the project, very pleased with the result, but always wanted to be kept completely anonymous. In terms of outcomes, I've had over 100 people take part in the project from different countries around the world. It's still ongoing. I had some very good publicity through a BBC website, photo blog, which gave me a massive backlog of people wanting to take part, which I hope to deal with at some point. But perhaps the most interesting thing for me was having a physical exhibition of the project. This isn't an online project alone, it's also a physical project. This is at the Denner Wall Pavilion in Bexhill. This was in conjunction with their John Cage exhibition, which took place earlier this year. So the images were shown very large on the wall, and also a case with the kind of the physical relics of the project. So it's an online project which also, as in Kirsty's case, also exists in real life. So the project's still ongoing. At some point I'd like to put the images together in a book or something like that. And to sum up, I guess this is not about technology, it's about a kind of meeting between high-tech and low-tech. So people engage with very sophisticated technology through the internet and social networking, and what they receive is a piece of traditional mail art, I suppose, and a very, very simple camera. So the project, I use the internet as a means of driving the project along, and also collaborating and getting feedback. And it certainly enriched the project, and I don't think it would have grown in the way it did, being so successful, or any of those things if I hadn't engaged with website, Flickr, Facebook, right from the start. It also enables you to gauge reaction to the project as it progresses, which is really, really useful as an artist. I just want to finish up with a quote, because I've got to finish somewhere. So I had a really nice quote from somebody who took part, who's a very technical photographer, very accomplished, much better than me, also an architect, somebody who thinks about things very cerebrally in his work. He wanted to know the f-stop of the camera when I sent it to him, and used an exposure chart to work out the exposure, which is all perfectly possible, but not something that I've ever tried to do. And basically what he said was, that was the most fun I've had with a matchbox since I was 9 years old.
One of the things, there's the similar online-offline thing I thought was really interesting about Lucy's project, and I was particularly interested in the idea of creative participation, because that's something that I think the online world really enables, and it makes accessibility to the idea of being an artist or taking part in an artistic work much more powerful and much more available to many more people.